Okay, well, why don't we, let's go ahead and get started. So my name is Dave Clifford. I'm going to be the facilitator for this morning's breakout session. And we're going to be talking about the challenges and opportunities in employee engagement. With this topic, we're going to be looking at what Bob refers to as WFH, which is work from home. It's not an acronym for anything other than that. And the hybrid environment, okay? But we're going to talk also about the recruiting and the retaining of talent in this environment as well, because I think it's it's an important issue. But I'm going to start by just having each one of the panelists give a quick introduction of themselves. Let's go from let's start with Dan Flanagan. Dan is a sales manager at Group Management Services down in Richfield. Dan, if you want to tell us a little bit about what you do at GMS and what's going on there.
Thanks, Dave. Dan Flanagan, GMS. We're what's known as a certified PEO, or professional employer organization. We're headquartered here in Richfield. GMS has 10 physical offices around the country, and we help small to mid-sized businesses with payroll, risk management, employee benefits, and HR. Very excited to be here today, Dave.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for being here. Next, we have Lori Kaplan. Lori is a financial advisor with Eagle Strategies and a recent work-from-home advocate. So, Lori, tell us a little bit about you and your business.
All right. Well, I ended up moving my business, and me and my staff do work from our own homes in a virtual environment. I am a financial advisor. I work a lot with closely held businesses and help them and assist them. And I've been doing this for almost 30 years in the Northeast Ohio area. I do everything from the planning to product placement, whether it's executive benefits, stock options, whatever the case may be. I help as the advisor to the business owner.
Great. Thanks, Lori. And let's run over to Mark Lapicus with Apple Growth Partners.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Mark Lapicus. I'm a principal at Apple Growth Partners. We're a full service CPA firm, work with privately held businesses, 4 offices here in Northeast Ohio. In addition to, working with clients on tax planning, structuring, succession planning, those types of things. I also work as help with we have a recruiter here at our firm, and I'm involved in all of our intern and associate interviews. So, I think when I saw this topic, I was really excited to hop on board because we're running into some challenges right now.
Well, Mark, I'll reach out to you, and Dan knows this as well. I also teach at John Carroll University, so if you need help getting any of our accounting teachers or professors involved, let me know. So, and last but certainly not least, Stacy Laratonda. She's Vice President Client Services at GMS. Stacy, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. So I work over with Dan in our Cleveland, Ohio office and oversee the HR and client services area. I've been doing HR for about 17 years now and work with tons of small and medium-sized clients all throughout the country. So this working from home and remote work environment is really kind of a hot topic right now. So I'm excited to offer some guidance on it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you all of the panelists for participating today, and also those guests that we have. The first question to the panel is really, we'll start with Stacy. So maybe share with us what some of the best tips are to managing a remote workforce today.
Yeah, I think what everybody's looking, if you didn't have a remote workforce prior to this, everybody's trying to figure out what they need to do or what's the best practice. I think Mark will talk a little bit about this too, but communication is the biggest thing, is understanding how you're going to communicate, what technology platform, what instant message platform, how often, what do meetings look like? They're probably a little bit shorter now that they're virtually. So adapting meeting length, listening to your employees that are working remotely. It's a little bit different. I think people have this mentality, if you're not in front of the person or can't step down by their office, that if they don't respond in 10 minutes, that they're throwing in a load of laundry. So understanding that new dynamic that exists, there's just a lot of things, but I think the biggest thing is communication and kind of setting the expectation kind of from the start, and kind of what goes into communication, turnaround time, time frame of working. So there's so many things, but communication I think is critical.
Sure, I agree. Mark, maybe you could comment a little bit about the communication.
Stacey,
that's something you've been actively involved with.
Yeah, Stacey, that was great. I would also add communication regarding the performance of your company. Right now, being a CPA firm, we're meeting with a lot of our clients, and we're hearing, clients that are doing very well in this environment that have kind of, they switched gears and they're maybe doing something different than they did before, or they just happen to fall in one of those industries that was, benefited from COVID. And then other clients who are struggling a bit. So sharing with your staff, sharing with your employees the performance of the company. I mean, if it's bad, you don't really want to share it, but if it's good, you certainly want to share it. And if it's bad, figure out the good things to highlight. I think that'll keep employees keep them more engaged and feel like you're more trustworthy and just a better environment for them to work at when they're working from home.
That's great. Thanks.
I'm going to jump in. So what I've noticed, since I just moved home, I guess, after spending almost 30 years in an office environment, made the decision that we could do that virtual cut up with us. So we are going through some growing pains in terms of communication with staff, because we all are at different places now and trying to get things done in a timely manner, and the printers and the scanners, and so you have the technology issue. It's enough, making sure there is an Ethernet cable and understanding what kind of lines you need to set up a home office. My back office is New York Life. It's a Fortune 100 company, and they are all virtual. So when I have clients that are my New York Life clients that call in, when I am calling our service center, or my staff is calling to get work done, they're calling someone's home and dealing with some of the things that Stacey said. And our turnaround time, which used to be like this, is delayed. And it's educating clients that things are taking longer, not because there's a problem, but because we're in a different environment and we're kind of going back a little bit. And we wish it could be Johnny on the spot like it used to be, but patience is virtue. But it's just, as Stacey or someone else said earlier, it's all about communication and managing expectations.
So let me bounce over to Dan Flanagan. Dan, if you would, what are the first thing that leaders and individual managers can do to help their employees really get ready? And you being a sales manager, how do you do this with sales in mind?
Yeah, so Dave, I think that the first thing is just getting the infrastructure right. And that's just the right technology. Do they have their laptop? Are they working off of a tablet? Do they have everything? We make a ton of cold calls over here at GMS. So is their headset working? Is their technology working through their computer? How are they set up for conference calls? Are they able to use mobile devices? And so I think the first thing really is the technology and just making sure that they're set up and they're comfortable. A lot of times when they're working from home, I think employees kind of feel alienated from the rest of the organization. So just making sure that they're at home and that they feel comfortable. And I think one thing too is that you just keep as much normalcy before COVID, whatever your routines were and your rituals, just try to do the same types of things that you were doing when you were going into an office as you are from home. Try to keep as much normalcy as you can.
Appreciate that. So let's pop over. So Stacey, maybe you could help this. What technology considerations should you think about with remote work?
Yeah, I think Dan hit on quite a few of them, but I think there's a lot of things that if you haven't thought about them today, you're kind of behind the eight ball. Just obviously your video platform system, your chat. A lot of people didn't think about chat features. Do you want people to be bogged down with using email as a quick messaging forum, or offer something like Slack or Yammer that's through Microsoft. There are a lot of products and tools out there to connect people in a quicker format without having to send a formal email. So thinking about that, where you're going to store and share documents, are you using a SharePoint site? How are you can you communicate that way through that system on documents? And then every other part of the process, I think we're going to talk a little bit about recruiting, but applicant tracking and onboarding, are those all electronic now? So how can you make those electronic to kind of make the process easier for new hires, new employees? But those are just some of the things to think about if you haven't started thinking about the different ways to communicate and not all being email or video conferencing, giving people different forums to communicate appropriately.
I know that
Let's dig into that a little bit. What are the technology platforms that you're using that you're finding to be most beneficial in communicating? I can tell you that, I mean, personally, I've got like all of these different email addresses and text messages and things that pop out to me, and it's challenging to manage through everything. Like for example, I found out that the phone number that's on the information that went out today is a phone number that I haven't used in a while. So I mean, now we've got to manage those issues as well. So how do you manage through all of this stuff? Maybe just share a little bit about the technology and what you guys are using.
So one of the things that I did, because it's just so complicated as a financial advisor with timestamps and getting things done for clients in a timely manner, because we have all these, FINRA and just kind of really important factors out there, is that we use Asana, my staff and I, and it really helps me and it helps them chart where everyone is in the process. So we have had things that have slipped through the cracks in this transition, and clients have been very understanding. However, they're only understanding to a point. So we've had to find ways to plug those holes with processes and systems of communication. It's tough, especially for me, being in the type of business that I'm in, with so many, I just have so many different moving parts and pieces, and keeping everyone on board, leading them to what they need to do, but continuing to do what I need to do. It's tough.
Dan, I'm curious, what kind of technology are you using from a sales management standpoint to monitor the salespeople? I mean, I guess you guys are using some kind of SharePoint product or Salesforce or something along those lines.
Yeah, we use we use Zoom, we use Skype, and we use Microsoft Teams. I think we have 10 different sales teams throughout our whole entire company, and every sales manager I think has a preferred technology. I love Zoom. I think it's quick, it's easy. It's not like you have to explain how to use it. It's very user friendly. We've just stuck to those three basic platforms and have used those throughout COVID, and they've been great.
So I'm curious, because I mean, having been in sales for a good part of my career, I always remembered the day that the sales manager would ride with us as a sales guy and go make the calls. And then you'd have that downtime of the drive from one call to the next call. Are you able to use this technology to be in front of more customers with your salespeople? By saying, hey, set up a Zoom call and I'll do that one with you at 8:30. And then you've got another one at 9, and you've canceled that drive time. Is that something that you can do, or you are doing, or I'm just curious?
Yeah, I think it's a challenge, Dave, when you sell something as intangible as we sell. It's something that you can't touch and smell and see and hear it. So we miss that personal touch and the relationship forming of physically being in someone's office. But I'll tell you, you can get a lot more done and way more efficiently. Our average sales reps would run 2 appointments a day. And I had a guy last week that ran 25 meetings in a week. And because he's eliminating the drive time. If they're leaving from Richfield and going to Avon Lake, and then Avon Lake to Solon, and then back to the office, that's a 4-hour, commute between appointments. And now it's jump on a Zoom or a Skype call, knock out a 30-minute meeting, jump off, do whatever you got to do, jump back on. It's great too, because everybody they don't have to be physically there and present. They could be anywhere. So yeah, it's saving a ton of time. We're definitely running more appointments. We are definitely missing the personal touch of physically being in someone's office and getting to know them, but we're getting a lot more done quicker.
Dan, just to piggyback on that, I think the better things that has come out of this, the technology piece of it, is that you can hop on, you get introduced to someone, or have a prospect. You can have a conversation with them via Microsoft Teams or Zoom and figure out if it's a good fit. If it's not a good fit, then you may have hopped in the car and drove an hour and a half, and spent 3 hours in the car, and then it turns out that the person in the sales process that you could have figured out early on it wasn't going to be a good fit right away. So hopping on a quick 30-minute Zoom or Microsoft Teams call, kind of figuring out is it going to be a good fit? What are you looking for? And then hopping in the car, it seems to be working well and saving a lot of time.
Hey, Dan, if you don't mind if I ask a question, are you seeing your sales cycle extended because it's more difficult to make that solid connection? And are you seeing your close rates change?
Great question, Jim. Yeah, I think the cycle's getting a little bit longer, only because of that, we're just missing that face-to-face interaction. It also allows our salespeople to gather a lot of data when we're there in their building, rather than just sending them an email saying, hey, I need this stuff to quote your business. And then I'm now sitting on it for 10 days or 2 weeks. And all of a sudden I see an email and now I have their quoting information. Whereas if we're physically there and it's one-on-one, I'm pushing to try to get as much data as I can when I'm there, because it's all in their files and things like that. Closing ratios, I think closing ratios, I don't think there's been enough time, Jim, to metrically and analytically dive into that yet, but I would say it's definitely slower. Our closing ratios, if I had to guess, are a little bit less, but it's hard to tell right now, because in our business the fourth quarter is where we do 45% of our annual business. So until that's over, I don't really know what those rates are, but it's definitely slowed it down.
I'm picturing the Always Be Closing, the Glengarry Estates video on Zoom. Remember that?
I do.
Always be closing. Always, and then you got the Saturday Night Live one. Always be cobbling. Remember when he did the Christmas? Those were classic. So let's talk about recruiting, the landscape, and how that's changed. Stacy, could you share with us some of the things that you guys are doing and how the recruiting landscape has changed? I shared with some of you yesterday on a quick call that, so my son recently, back in February, got this great new job offer. He was really excited. He gave his 2-week notice, and he had another couple of weeks, and this was back in February, and he was going to work for Progressive Insurance. And he's all excited, and I'm getting kind of nervous because I'm knowing what's going on, and I know how sometimes companies say, okay, let's put the brakes on. Let's not hire any more people. And I'm having nightmares that, oh my gosh, I'm going to have a rebound, and they're going to be moving back in with me. And this is not the way I had planned my life out and how it's affecting me. But he showed up for work on a Monday, and this was toward the end of March. And they onboarded him, handed him his laptop, and they said, well, you're going to work from home. And he's been working from home ever since, and everything's worked out fine. But gosh, recruiting today, the landscape has changed so much. But how are you guys doing it differently? What are you doing to attract and retain the top talent?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm glad it worked out for your son, though, Dave. As awkward as that is, starting a new job from home. But I think understanding that is impacting some people. So knowing that certain industries have been hit harder and using that as an opportunity. So have people taken a look at the industries impacted the hardest, and if those people can fit into your organization, like entertainment or hospitality, just how you can maybe take those people that didn't get those interns and plug them into your organization. One of the very first things we did when COVID hit, we're like, okay, so all of these people had big internships lined up for these financial companies in New York City. Can we grab any of them and utilize them within our organization and help our clients? And so kind of utilizing that. And then just how has your interview process changed? Are you using virtual screens? How are you communicating with candidates? People are doing everything a lot more virtual now. So do you use Skype for that? Are you using an applicant tracking system to kind of build in your interview process? And then like Lori said, she's moved to a 100% remote environment. Have you thought about posting all of your jobs with a remote type of stipulation where you can hire not just in Cleveland, Ohio, but anywhere across the country? It's really an opportunity to see what other top talent's out there that's not necessarily headquartered. We want people from Cleveland, but where else can we, pluck the best top talent in order for your organization to grow? So just a few areas that you can really kind of hone in on if you are still recruiting.
Yeah, I would think that would give you an opportunity to go after some of the competitors' top talent. If you went to, I'm not going to mention any competitors, but if you went to the cities where their corporate headquarters are, maybe people want to leave. That becomes a target of your advertising and your Indeed or whatever it is that you use from an online standpoint to really get outside of the box. Whereas, let's say you wouldn't necessarily want somebody to have a relocation from, say, a Minneapolis, St. Paul to Cleveland, Ohio, and have to go through those expenses. Now they can work remotely from there and provide you with some terrific services. So,
and there's some tools. Indeed, I don't know if you've all heard of them, but Indeed has targeted ads, so they can place your job ads behind other job ads in areas that you want it to pop up in, or industries, or you can kind of create what that looks like, and it automatically pops up behind other people's job ads. So there's some creative ways to get your job in front of candidates that you want to get it in front of.
Sure.
I think
and you can use LinkedIn and some of the other tools from a search engine standpoint to identify the best talent.
It's interesting you say that. My son-in-law, my daughter and son-in-law lived in Seattle, and they worked for the big mighty Starbucks, support the brand. And he ended up getting recruited out of LinkedIn to go to work for Intuit in Tucson, Arizona. And he moved there in March, and he worked there for 4 days. My daughter had permission to work remotely. She moved to Tucson, and they are hostage in this house, and they both are working from home with a baby, knowing no one. And they could live, and he's like, we could live anywhere. I uprooted us and moved us here, and it's just a tough situation. We are finding that we can also hire. I don't have to hire a support person locally with technology being what it is. There are virtual assistant type companies out there. And then there are people that, that I know that live in other states that can provide the value add that I need to my team. And with the current environment with technology and going through a few bumps, it can be very effective.
Dave,
I know someone who's moving to China, and they'll work independently from China to help them with their support work.
Wow. I think one thing too is to go back and kind of see the industries in which you pulled talent from before COVID. Mm-hmm. Like for me, I had a lot of success in the restaurant and bar industries. And I got a lot of people sitting out here that have had a ton of success selling GMS's services that came from both of those industries. Well, like Stacy said, both those industries are crushed by COVID, and people are being laid off left and right. So this talent of these kind of diamonds in a rough, I call them, when it comes to restaurant people, they're out there and they're looking for positions. They're also looking for advancements in career. They don't want to be in restaurant or bartending forever. Well, now's prime time. So we just looked at it as an opportunity, and I've been seeking out that particular industry, only knowing that there's people out there looking for jobs. So we've had success with doing that.
So you're justifying going out to the bars and nightclubs in order to recruit top talent? Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm not, nope, I'm not saying that. In fact, you can't do that now, Dave, and you definitely can't do that after 10 p.m.
How many of us are?
Nothing good
up
happens.
to 10 p.m.?
Nothing good happens after 10 p.m.
Right.
So
All right,
I know our business, just share real quick, our business, we used to have like, different events, which Dave, you're probably familiar with it, but they would have like evening with accountants in various schools, where now all these events went virtual, and it doesn't seem like a lot of students are attending a lot of these virtual events. And all of our interviews have been virtual with, new candidates, intern candidates. And it almost seems like the vast majority of them, I keep getting asked the question, are you guys back in the office, or when will you be back? And it's like, well, it's probably not through, June of next year would probably be the earliest that you start to see everyone. We probably have 30 people that come in just because it's easier to get things done at the office, young kids at home, whatever it may be. And most of the candidates that I talk to seem like they want to be in the office to get to kind of know the people that they're working with, which is just kind of odd because, I was under the impression that anyone coming out of school wanted to work virtually. And now that I'm talking to people, I know people, it seems like they actually want to, they want to be near the people that they're working with.
Great, thanks, Mark. So let's talk a little bit about how do you continue to engage your top talents and avoid burnout. So, burnout's an issue that, quite frankly, I'm burned out on Zoom. It's nice, but I'm teaching a couple classes. We're Zooming. I think today I'll be on Zoom for about 8 hours. So how do you avoid the burnout, and how do you continue to keep talent engaged, especially your top talent?
I can start.
Let's go, Stacy, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think it's about knowing your staff, knowing your team, knowing what signs are that, someone's experiencing that. Because to Dave's point, it's, I think everybody's a little bit more back to back with meetings. A little off topic, but I got this tip when I was in this kind of time management virtual seminar a few weeks ago. They told you to be more conscious about the time frame you schedule for meetings. So if you don't need a full hour, schedule 45 minutes or 15 minutes, and be conscious about when you're scheduling in other people's meetings, not to go back to back. Give people a 15-minute or 10-minute in between the other meeting on their calendar before scheduling your next one. I think little things like that help to avoid burnout, but it's going to happen. And listening, surveying your employees, asking how things are going. If you're not seeing them in a daily call, make sure you're doing weekly check-ins, whether that's a quick phone call. But I think the understanding what the signs are and then kind of navigating through that, because I think burnout's it's happening more than it was 8 months ago. Days are longer. It's easier to work for 10 hours or 12 hours instead of 8 hours. I think you set an example too, making sure you know when to turn it off. I'm a firm believer that I like to start my day at 5 a.m., but not everybody else does. So delaying my emails till 8 a.m. when other people are working, I think that sets the tone for your team. Just a few things to kind of set the model of how you should operate and avoid burnout.
That's great, Stacy. So one of the questions that came up as far as surveying, I had a client I was with on Friday, and they're talking about their holiday party. And what are they going to do for their holiday party? What's that going to look like? So it's going to be an issue. Let's talk a little bit about that. What are you thinking about for your holiday party? What are you doing? What are some of the best practices?
Can I? I'm going to jump in and tell you what we did at New York Life. So we did two things. Our year end is June 30th. And so we always have a big council party, and it's on a boat, it's at a vineyard, it's wherever it is. So what was done this year was a celebrity chef was hired. It happened to be Michael Simon, but it doesn't matter. And we were all sent out his cookbook or recipe in the Zoom call. And so we all knew what we had to do ahead of time. And we cooked with Michael. And that's what we did as, individually in our homes. And we were flashed around and stuff like that. And I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. And the food was great. I haven't made it since, but I enjoyed it more than I thought. And so that's an idea. Get a celebrity chef to come in or do a rah-rah session and have your people, just like at the sports games where they have that board with everyone holding up all their stuff and stuff like that, at football games and stuff like that, as a way of recognition.
Such a cool
Great.
idea.
Yeah. Stacy, what are you guys doing for your Dan? What are you doing for your holiday party?
It's so funny that you brought that up. We just got an email about that because we usually do a big wedding type of Christmas party here at our office, but obviously we can't do that this year. We're giving people the flexibility to kind of determine what's best for their teams, their smaller business units. And it's funny because I just started doing some research on virtual, just different virtual team builders. I saw a virtual talent show and I'm like, okay, could we do something like this with a Christmas? How do we incorporate, or do people want to get together in small groups still and try to do something that way? So I'm going to go back to the survey mechanism and ask my team. I have a team of about 50 people and ask them, what are they comfortable with? What do they want to see? How do we still make sure you feel like it's a good time of year that we can celebrate and do it safely and in the format that they are comfortable with?
Great. Thanks, Stacy. Mark, how about you?
So we have not announced anything yet, but I can speak to a charity that I sit on the board for foundation. We're doing an event at Topgolf, and we'll probably have 50 or 60 people there, but we can be outdoors. They have the little heaters above, and we can sort of socially distance while we get out there and golf. And I think golf was kind of a big thing this year. I actually work with a couple of golf courses, and they had record-breaking years because that was a social distancing activity. And with the one foundation I'm on, we're doing an event at Topgolf. The company, we haven't figured anything out yet, so I'm listening to ideas.
That's actually a great idea. I still haven't been there, but I drive by it. It seems like 10 times a week, but I still haven't been there. And I'm an avid golfer, which is wrong. So, Dan, are you doing anything for your individual sales team? Have you thought about that yet?
Like Stace said, Dave, we just got an email saying that we weren't going to have our regular kind of family function over here at GMS. So we're breaking up into individual departments. We actually have 2 sales teams out of our headquarters. So we'll do something together. We always do something as a collective unit. Topgolf sounds like a great idea, like Mark said, but I guarantee you that's booked up. But I don't know, Dave. I have no idea. We're stuck in fourth quarter mode over here.
All right. Well, let's see. Maybe you do yours in January. Have it Russian Orthodox Christmas or something like that. I think it's January 7th. So
depends
on
on
let's talk a little bit.
Sales are.
Depends on how good sales are. Yeah, if you're off the charts, maybe you go to Palm Springs or something.
Great.
So let's talk a little bit about the psychology. So what should people who aren't accustomed to remote work do to get psychologically ready for all of this? And what are you doing to keep your mind sharp? Let's start with Dan on this one.
I think, the water cooler, the water fountain talks are gone. And a lot of people use those to take breaks throughout a day, especially here at GMS. They're taking a break. They want to go talk to a friend real quick, or they're dealing with an employee issue. So they walk over and they're dealing with an employee issue, and that becomes a personal conversation. And so I think we're missing a little bit of that with the remote in the virtual world now. So it's maybe just scheduling those conversations with people through WhatsApp or through Teams, and just having a daily talk with a friend or a colleague or a mentor of yours that doesn't even work at the company that you work at, just so that you're having conversations and dialogue, and you're just trying to keep things as normal as possible. keep saying normal, but it's like the more normalcy that you keep, I think you're building, the same culture that you had.
So creating a little like Slack chat, if you will, that talks
Yes.
about the deal you just closed. Because if I remember correctly, you guys have a bell, right? So every time someone does something, you get to go ring the bell.
Yeah, we have a gong, and we play videos, and we use Yammer through Salesforce, or we use Yammer as our through SharePoint to communicate interdepartments and talk about successes. So we still do that, so all of our other departments can see when things have been sold. But yeah, that day-to-day interaction, I think it's just whatever personally you like the best as a technology, just use it.
Right. So you don't actually like have all your salespeople log into Zoom for an all-day work session, and you're sitting there watching them make their calls.
No, absolutely not.
So you can't come out of the corner. You can't come out of the office and go see what they're doing. They could be doing whatever, and you don't even know until the gong gets hit.
Yeah, I think it's just setting the expectation of when you're going to be communicating with your team, how often you're going to communicate with your team, and what medium that you're going to communicate with them, and just trying to keep things as structured as you can, but setting the right expectation.
And I'll piggyback off
Okay.
of that a little bit, if you don't mind.
Please.
Those structured conversations are so good, but I'll tell you that to not schedule something and just to call someone, I've been trying to find that, not on a daily basis, but weekly, to say in my head, who haven't I talked to this week? And as I'm driving home, I give them a buzz just to see how they're doing, how their week's going, because scheduled sometimes is too forced. It's not like that water cooler, right, Dan? It's necessary to have those structured scheduled, but challenge yourself, I think, to think outside of that at times, and, pick up the phone and say, what, out of my 8 people that report directly up to me, who haven't I engaged with? I have people that we're a hybrid. So some people are in the office, some people aren't. And I could go weeks without crossing paths. So I make sure that if I don't cross the path and don't have that small talk, that I cross the path this way and check in through text, call, and do a 5-minute water cooler.
Yeah, I don't think it always has to be business related either. I think COVID has impacted us so personally that, the empathy that we have towards our employees is so important, just checking in on them. How you doing? How your parents doing? How your kids doing? How they adapting? How they doing with school? Just caring about the individual, not just everything, just driving work. Care about them outside of work and what they're doing and the challenges that they're dealing with, and see if you can help them in any other way other than, just what they're doing 8 to 5 wise.
And that brings up a good point too, because you can pull up information that maybe you wouldn't always remember. And then you can ask them those questions of, maybe it makes it a little bit more personal when you say, how's your son Bob doing with his baseball, or whatever that is. And maybe you didn't remember that because you've got, so many people. There was a guy that I met one time. He always amazed me because he would meet you in person and he would remember your spouse's name. He would remember your kids' names. And I don't know if any of you have ever met this guy, Carl Ertl, who runs Walsh Jesuit High School, but that's the guy I'm talking about. I mean, he always amazed me, and he knew all the students, and he knew all the parents' names and their dogs' names. Just a remarkable guy. And it's always nice to be able to have that little backup. And my memory isn't as good as his. So I would probably have to pull up the profile to figure out everything that's over on this other side, but just some of the things we can do. So how does the psychological health, what do employers do to make sure that people are staying focused, committed, and happy? How are you managing that part of it? So to make sure that they're focused, committed, and happy. It's one thing to do a check-in, but what are the measurables? Are you doing key performance indicators or anything to monitor that? Let's start with Mark.
Yeah, so I would say for us the biggest thing is checking in, doing check-in meetings. I I think since this all started, a lot of communication has been informal. So I do, I'll do a Microsoft Teams call just at random, or I'll shoot the person a text message. Usually I don't do that until, I'll shoot them a text once, say, hey, how's everything going? If they don't text me back frequently, then I quit using text as a means of communication. But so far everyone's, I get random texts, from people, which has been nice. But, to check in and measurables for us, it's pretty easy because it's really are they hitting their hours? If they're not, if they're not doing the work, doing the work that's assigned to them, then something's probably an issue, and then we got to figure it out. Maybe it's because kids are potentially at home and they're trying to deal with that, the schooling piece in a virtual world as compared to sending them to school, whatever it may be. But for us, it's our measurable is usually looking at hours worked, or you hear something that possibly comes up from someone else. Seems like a lot of people at our firm at least have a couple people that they talk to on a regular basis.
Stacy, how about you? How do you work with this with your team?
I think it comes back down to what you said, Dave, is the key performance indicators. If you didn't have those set up prior, it's easy to kind of get lost in the what's everybody doing. So if you don't know you have to know what you're measuring, and what you're measuring, there's usually multiple parts of it that indicate, the outcome you're looking for. So making sure you're talking about those, whether that's on a daily cadence, if it's phone calls like Dan has, or weekly cadence meetings. Ours are HR projects. So how many times did you talk with the client? How many virtual meetings did you run? We've noticed being stood up a lot more. Dan's probably can speak to that a little bit too. First meetings or a client meeting, it's so much easier to cancel when we're trying to get, a handbook in place. So I think knowing what those are and talking about those in your weekly check-ins, I think are critical.
My
Great.
organization is not as huge. It's just me and two other people. And so it's much more on a smaller scale, but it's KPIs, looking at the work that's getting done, using the project management system. Our work is fluid. It changes every day. It's not a routine. I'm a big believer. It's not in the hours you put in, it's what you do in those hours. And I've had some situations with both my staff people where flexibility and the fact that we are now not in a brick and mortar has really helped them with some family situations where I've had the flexibility as long as you get the work done and that I get this out of you, but get the other stuff done, and I'm able to measure that. So I've had to shift back and be a little bit more chill about the whole thing, but I recognize that in order to make them happy, I've got one woman who's a full-time caregiver to her husband right now and still getting my work done. And sometimes she gets it done at 4 a.m. and sometimes it's at 11 at night, but she gets done what needs to get done in the workday. And then the other stuff she does at other times. And it's being able to accept that and trust in it.
Okay, great. Joe Little, are you available for a question?
Absolutely.
I'd be curious, can you tell us a little bit about your business and some of the challenges that you have related to this topic today?
Yeah, so today's timing is actually kind of ironic because, well, I guess a little bit about my business first. I'm a part owner of Lake Tech Communications. We're an IT company of about just under 50 people based in North Olmsted. And, this has certainly been an interesting time for us as an IT shop. I feel extremely fortunate because we were able to send everybody home to work remote. We didn't miss a single customer phone call from that time until now. We went remote in March, and we started to bring everybody back into kind of that hybrid environment. So we kind of kept the salespeople out, brought some people back in from an operations perspective. And, we took a look at it in terms of, who gets more out of collaboration, and let's start bringing those people back in, but keep the ones that maybe can be a little more of a lone wolf out of the office for now. And the reason that this timing for this event is kind of interesting is because literally yesterday we got our first positive COVID test, and that person was in the office yesterday. And so now we had to kind of go through that whole, okay, we're going back out into into a remote scenario again. So this is my first day back at my home office here, and so that's kind of how I relate to this topic. But I really appreciate all the input you guys have given. I think there's been a lot of interesting things thrown out there. We've had to overcome a lot of challenges. We're really big on culture. And so for me, it's very personal. I want to make sure that, there's KPIs are one thing, but I also want to make sure that, my project manager, who's a mom and dealing with 2 special needs kids at home and working from home full time and trying to keep up with, incredible demands and trying to train somebody else that's brand new in the role as her partner. There's a lot of tough situations that we've had to try to figure out. So there's the work stuff, there's the personal stuff, and I think it's been a challenge. We've done some kind of cool social things to try to keep everybody engaged and that kind of thing. And I'm not sure if there's an area you wanted me to jump into more, but I wanted to at least kind of give you a little bit of a lay of the land on sort of where I'm at with things.
So how many employees do you have?
42.
42. And all of those are remote at this point. How are you managing that through? What are you doing for your culture now?
Yeah,
you've got it.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I've learned a lot throughout this process. I think that one fortunate thing that we had going into COVID, so in March when everybody went remote, we were able to, we've got super high retention. We've got a lot of good people that have been there a long time. And so for us, we were able to sort of cash in on that goodwill because we already know each other. We didn't have to build relationships. They were already there. They were already forged. All we had to do was keep the communication going. So we, I did at least weekly emails. Here's where we're at. Here's where things are. Consistent communication has seemed to really, I get a lot of feedback on the side of people going, hey, thanks so much for letting us know where things stand and for just being transparent with where we are. And you don't have to say, I know everything. And this is the roadmap. It goes, guys, with the information I have right now, I think this is the best path, subject to change an hour from now. I don't know, we'll have to see what happens. But people seem to be appreciative of that. What are we doing, right now? We're certainly, I heard you guys talk about, how do you ensure that people stay engaged? And I think you have to be, as a leader, a little bit more sensitive to the small things on the Richter scale. Sometimes when you're in the office, it's like, yeah, maybe that's just anecdotal or whatever. Now you see a KPI dip a little bit, you kind of got to jump on it and go, hey, are you okay? Is everything all right? Are you doing okay? Or you hear a whisper from somebody, hey, you might want to check on this one. Your job as a leader is to go do that. You got to go do those check-ins. And by the way, this is an amazing leadership opportunity right now because we're in a spot where people just want to make sure that they know where they're at. They want to know that their job is safe and they want to know everybody's marching in the same direction. And if as a leader, you do that and you deliver on that, I think you put a lot of goodwill in the bank for going forward. So you got to seize on this opportunity. That's the way I view it.
That's great, Joe. Thank you. Jim, care to talk a little bit about your experience with some of the cultures that you've seen with some of your clients?
Sure, Dave. Actually, as I'm listening, I'm thinking this is probably more pertinent to our culture internally. We work remotely. Our whole organization is virtual. And I've been doing this 6 years, but the organization is very disjointed. And the key to us being successful, I believe, is people understanding the expectations, understanding the behavioral accountability, and then just internal communication. And I think it was Stacy made the comment that, you just have to touch base with people periodically when they don't expect it, because it can't always be a work thing and a routine. You've got to break it up, and you've got to, reach out to them and tell them a joke. I mean, do anything to just get them to engage from a personal perspective before you jump into the work issues or some of those ideas. As far as our client base goes, Dave, we're in a couple hundred clients, and it's across the map. I mean, it just varies so dramatically. Manufacturing, obviously, they have to be on site to get done what they've got to get done. Service organizations, it can kind of vary. And I think Joe's comment about the people that, the sales crew, by all means, kick those dummies out of the building, right? I mean, they don't need to be around. they're just causing problems most of the time anyways. I'm a sales guy, so I get to say those things. But the collaborative nature is where you've got to be careful. And kind of the mind sharing is much more difficult, obviously, in this environment. So if you're creating new thoughts and processes, that's where you got to really be careful. But I mean, it's been a very interesting time. And for us personally, it hasn't been dramatic because we've kind of gotten used to this over the years.
Yeah, I agree. You know, as some of you know, I've been working on my doctorate in business administration and leadership, and I'm at that tail end where I'm working on my dissertation. And you know, when I first started 2020, I thought this was going to be the year of vision. You know, I don't know if you remember, but everybody was talking about how we were going to have 2020 vision this year, and I think it was going to be an amazing year, and everything was going to be clear. And then COVID hit. And I think one of the things that I'm amazed with this year more than anything else is, as a professor in entrepreneurship and teaching creativity, innovative thinking, and collaboration, how this year is going to go down in history as being not just the year of COVID, but the year of creativity and innovation. I've seen every single organization have to pivot their business to become better, or they didn't. And we've seen a lot of businesses that aren't going to make it. There's going to be, I think I just saw, there's a significant increase in the number of recruiting firms because companies are no longer recruiting the way they were. So there's all sorts of things that need to be done. I've had to repivot my business, you know, and what I do and how I make money. And I think we all have. And I think that's just the amazing part about all of this. And as we work as leaders to continue to recruit and retain top talent that are going to be able to be Gumby, as I call it, be flexible, be able to work from home, be able to come into the office, be able to collaborate via Zoom. I mean, these are some of the great things that we're going to be able to do. So I wanted to give all of you just thanks for participating in this panel discussion today, and ask if you've got any last minute words of advice for each other on this group. And then Bob also mentioned there's a link in the chat for the luncheon speaker for Len Komorowski, and I just wanted to put a plug in for that as well. But let's start with Stacy. Any last thoughts you'd like to share with everyone?
I would just kind of piggyback off of Jim a little bit. I think the biggest takeaway during all of this is to be even more personal than you were before. Do what you can to check in and understand what someone else is dealing with may be completely different than what you're dealing with. So I found that you're going to get 10 times the production out of that person if they feel like you care. And I just think that that's the best advice I can give anyone right now.
Great. Thank you so much, Stacy. Lori?
I'm going to piggyback now on what Stacy said. I agree with that. I've experienced it in my own staff, and as I've spoken with my clients that are business owners, et cetera, with what they're doing, whether it's remotely or half in, half out, or whatever the case may be, it is the flexibility, it's the understanding, it's having to kind of rework the requirement to get the output, and then help with the culture. And it's taken a lot of creativity, as you said, Dave, in order to get that done so that the business can move forward. It's an interesting year.
It is. Thanks, Lori. Mark, how about you?
Sort of piggybacking off of everyone, but be flexible. People are going to remember how you treated them during this period. So the better that you can treat them, hopefully that pays dividends down the road.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Dan Flanagan.
I would just say care more about the person right now than the worker. Just show empathy towards them, get to know them personally. It's an opportunity for us to get to know our staff and the people that work for us every day. And I think the more that we care about them as people, the more that they are going to run through walls for you. I'm just a big believer in the more that you put in the lives of others will one day come back to the life of your own. So that's just a good principle to share.
That's great, Dan. And as a as a professor from a Jesuit Catholic university, I will share with you that one of the terms the Jesuits use quite often is a Latin term called cura personalis, which means care for the whole person. And I think no other point in history have we needed to do that more than today. It's a great time to check in with people, check in with your employees, check in with your friends, and even just have that personal conversation with the person you report to, and check in with them and see how they're doing. You know, we sometimes tend to, you know, focus on the top down, but sometimes even just reaching up. You know, I've reached out to the president of John Carroll and just said, you know, how are you doing through all of this? And it's really concerning because, I mean, they've had to make some really tough decisions, short-term decisions and long-term decisions. So, Jim, anything you'd like to share before we go?
Nothing specific, Dave. I mean, I think it's been a great conversation. You know, understand why people are doing what they're doing, I guess. You know, if you look at Simon Sinek and, you know, start with why, I think that'll help us interact with people and understand what their motives are.
I agree. I agree. Well, let's end it there. Let's give a virtual round of applause to everyone who was able to participate today. Thank you, all of you, for coming. And the link over here for the luncheon speaker, feel free to click on that, and that'll take you right to it as we speak. And look forward to seeing all of you again. Thanks again for your participation. All right.
Bye. Thank
Take care.
you.
Thanks, Dave.